Hi, I'm Beth.
And I'm Courtney.
Welcome to Dead Reckoning, a podcast where death isn't the end of the story.
And this week, we are talking about the People's Temple, the infamous cult that killed 1,000 people in Jonestown, Guyana. You have probably heard about this awful story. You probably know something about Jim Jones and Jonestown. But today, we really want to focus on the San Francisco roots of this story. This is a story about San Francisco. At the peak of their influence, People's Temple was operating here in the city, and Jim Jones was deeply involved in local politics. And if you don't know all this, there are some surprising names that are going to come up in this episode that you're going to be like, oh, he helped get who elected? This is a kind of a San Francisco story. So how we're going to do it today is I'm going to give a brief history of the People's Temple, talk about what they were doing here. And then Beth is going to talk about where some of the members that were murdered are buried and the controversial burial monument to them in Oakland.
Yep. Stay tuned.
This is, you guys, let me just like off the top say that this is a heavy episode. There is going to be mentions of suicide, murder, abuse. If you don't want to listen to this, please don't listen. Go back and listen to one of our more cheerful podcasts. Like I would suggest maybe The Pest House, because that was a long time ago and it doesn't hurt as much to hear about about that. This is kind of a rough one.
I've been thinking a lot about that quote that says comedy is like tragedy plus time. But I think even with this one, it's not. It's just still tragedy.
It's rough and it's kind of long. I want to really, my interest is really in focusing on what happened here in San Francisco, but also, and I was telling Beth and Carolyn before we recorded, I want to do a good job on this. I know Beth does too. We've done a lot of research on it, and I don't want to skip over the bad parts just because they're horrible. Like I think it's important to the story and to understanding what really happened there, and that these were like our neighbors that were killed in Guyana. Quick note on my sources. There are many of them. I have been eyeballs deep in Jonestown for a couple weeks now. Here we go. The first book I read was called 1,000 Lives by Julia Scheeres, and it's really good. It's really readable. It's excellent. It's detailed, but not like too granular. She did a really good job on it. The next book is Season of the Witch by David Talbot. This is a book about San Francisco in the 1970s, and it's excellent. Especially if you live here, you need to go get this book because it really explains how the hippies transitioned into the 1970s, how it went from like the summer of love to like the summer of meth and serial killers. It's excellent. You should read it. The third big resource that I used for this episode is Last Podcast on the Left, which is one of my favorite podcasts. They did a 5-episode series on Jonestown that's pretty granular. And that one has a lot of good information in it. And comedy is history plus time or something, Beth. They are very funny. But the thing about Last Podcast is they're funny in the way where they make fun of the bad people. It is a digestible way to get that history because there's some comedy in there too. So to understand the story of Jonestown, we got to talk about Jim Jones, the infamous fucking Jim Jones with the sunglasses and the leisure suits, Elvis Presley hair. Jim Jones was born in Indiana. He got his start preaching there, and he started off as a good guy. This is another part of the story that I think people don't know. Jim Jones was a genuine reformer in the beginning who really cared about civil rights. He cared about Black people in Indianapolis, which is not true of the other white people there. This was in the 1950s. This is before the Civil Rights Act. Indianapolis was pretty segregated. Businesses were segregated. I'm pretty sure the Ku Klux Klan was born in Indiana, but don't quote me on that. Indianapolis in the 1950s, Jim Jones actually opened a church on the Black side of town. His demographic and his congregation was mostly Black people. In fact, mostly Black women. And that would continue throughout his reign. He adopted kids of different races. He did a lot of civil rights work in town. He was eventually named the first human rights commissioner of Indianapolis. True story. He started off good. I mean, he probably always had the intention to lead a cult or want power, but I think it is interesting. A lot of his followers, and we're going to see this, were really people who were interested in civil rights and they wanted to make the world a better place. It's just the People's Temple was not it. In the 1960s, he moved his congregation out to Redwood Valley, California, which is near Ukiah. And the reason he picked this spot is, I forget what magazine. Some magazine had just done a spread about like where the safest places in the United States were in the event of a nuclear war. And Redwood Valley was one of those places. Jim Jones was always fucking paranoid and weird, but also this was like a thing it's kind of like a threat that he used to scare his congregation into moving out there, right? He kind of used this as like there could be nuclear war, we got to go move. And one of the other places on that list was Guyana. So this was like planted the seed for that commune. Once they're in Redwood Valley, they came across the country in buses. He began to preach socialism, and they called it divine socialism.
Is this why the Republicans now think that socialism is bad? I mean,
I should write in my notes, insert joke here. This is not fucking socialism, you guys. This is a cult leader. So before you hop on Facebook to scream about it, just settle down, all right? Jim Jones socialism, the People's Temple socialism, meant that they started to live communally and they were tithing large amounts of money to Jim Jones. They were handing their businesses over to him. They were working for free for the church. This is the Jim Jones socialism. It's more like you give all your money to me and I do whatever I want with it. That's not, no fights in the comments, okay? This is Jim Jones you're talking about here. Settle down. He's not exactly a Marxist philosopher. Really, Jim Jones, even back then, he kind of knew, right? He's going to preach socialism. You guys have to give me your money. And then he's using that money to amass power and connection. This is like real cult leader shit.
Right. He's seizing the means of production, taking it away from everybody else.
You guys remember, this is an economics podcast now. In the 1970s, early 1970s, Jim Jones is like, Redwood Valley, I need to be somewhere where I can get more power. Redwood Valley is not doing it for me. So he moves his congregation in 1972 to San Francisco. They bought a property at 1859 Geary, which is Geary and Fillmore. It's right next to the Fillmore. Now it's a post office. I looked the building up on Google Maps and I was like, it's a post office now? And I'm like, that's probably not the same building, but it is. It's the actual same building.
Wow. Well, and this is when the Fillmore district was still a majority Black neighborhood, right?
Oh, correct. That's why he moved there. Beth, stop. I don't share my outlines with Beth. She reads my mind. Okay, so he did pick the Fillmore on purpose because it was a Black neighborhood. And of course, the Fillmore had just undergone this urban renewal. You can't see me, I'm doing air quotes. What's the real word term for it? Gentrification or?
I mean, yeah, gentrification.
Segregation by design. They ran Geary Boulevard through the Fillmore and kind of disrupted all the neighborhoods there. And Jim Jones was like, oh, you know what that means? That means I could use this to get some congregants. And he did. He was poaching congregants from Black churches. I mean, we'll get into this later, but he also is like super cozy with Black leaders in town. Throughout a lot of this, he's still doing the work. Like they're doing food and clothing drives. They operate soup kitchens. They do stuff for old folks. They do this kind of shit, but it's becoming a cult at the same time. And he's also taking all their money. He starts to get weirder and his sermons start to get weirder. He's talking about government conspiracy theories and the services at People's Temple on Geary. He also starts to do these fake faith healings. One of the reasons why this episode is going to be so long, this outline is so long, is because there's so many crazy stories that like you got to know because they're wild. So one of the things he would do is he drugged an old lady with Quaaludes because Jim Jones loved drugs himself. We'll get into it. He eventually became a full-blown drug addict. But he drugged an old lady with his Quaaludes. Don't you wish Quaaludes were still a thing? We missed out on that. That's the only thing I'd like to bring back from the 70s.
Blissful relaxation.
I just want one time. I just want one time. I just want one time, or I want to watch somebody on them.
You know what? Right. I feel like in the Trump era with RFK, like that, he's about to kill us all with measles. He could bring Quaaludes.
For sure. Back. I mean, they sound
and Tab.
Brutal. Anyways, back to the
Tab. Okay, so he drugged her. Then they put a cast on her leg. And when she woke up, they told her that she had fallen, hit in her head, passed out, and broke her leg. Jim Jones came up and healed her leg with his magic, religious, divine socialism powers.
Oh, no.
They actually fucking did that.
Does she buy it?
I don't know. I don't know. Julia Scheeres did not say. So the other thing he would do is he would do these healings where he would, this is like some sleight of hand stuff. I'm not exactly sure where he's putting these things, but he would use chicken guts and he would lay hands on people and pull out a handful of chicken guts and say that he had pulled cancer out of their body. Okay. I don't know how much of a zombie you have to be to believe that, but
wow.
He did that. He did that. He is also at this time, he's starting to talk about the promised land. Of course, this is biblical stuff, right? He has Guyana on his radar from his nuclear war paranoia days. And apparently Guyana was also a newly minted socialist republic or country. So he secretly buys land out there. So, he's got money because he's taking all this money from his congregation. He starts telling people about it, and then he starts telling them that they need to work towards funding it. And by that, I mean, he sends them out to panhandle and beg on the streets.
Ugh.
So
great.
You're in San Francisco in the 1970s, and you're seeing People's Temple, people out on the corners asking for money to fund their commune. That was just like a fact of life, right? So people are seeing this. He amassed a very large following here and in LA.
Maybe you'll talk about this later, but like, what were his pitches to people? Like, why were they going for it?
Well, part of it was that you could be part of this community that was like hooked into this social network in the city that was doing good work. So he had different pitches from what I understand to white people and to Black people. To Black people, he was like, I'm in it for the revolution. I'm in it for the struggle. And then he would kind of pitch it to white people like, oh, you can do real work for the Black community and also for poor people and it was kind of a social justice pitch. And at that time, of course, these ideas are becoming popular in America. And he's using that to mobilize people. And then, of course, once they get in the door, it's cult leader manipulation shit. He has 8,000 members that he can call on at any given time, which makes him a political powerhouse in the city. If you need something, he can turn people out to protest, to city hall meetings, to the polls, things like that, right?
Yeah, he's got basically his own volunteer network / army.
Yeah, he's an organizer. Shout out to the organizers. I am one myself. But this is like, that's what he is. He's organizing. He's a community organizer. Anyway, one of his political opponents calls his members the zombie flock because they basically will just do whatever he says. So he becomes very important politically in the city. He's hooked into the Black leadership. He's got a shitload of followers he can call on to do whatever he needs. He has money. He's donating to campaigns. He's donating to organizations. And he has a lot of power and he has visibility. So in 1975, he helps George Moscone get elected mayor. And he also helps Joseph Freitas be elected district attorney. And we're later going to find out he also helps Harvey Milk get elected in 1977. Harvey Milk, if you guys don't know, George Moscone was mayor. Harvey Milk was our first gay supervisor. They were both assassinated in the late 70s.
It was within a couple of months of the Jonestown massacre. I remember that much. Like it was just one and then the other, and
groovy.
It was awful. Yeah. George Moscone was a good mayor.
That's why this is a San Francisco story. He also was hooked up with Black leaders like Willie Brown. Dude, Willie Brown is still around too. He's still fucking... Didn't Donald Trump... It's a sidetrack. Side note. Didn't Donald Trump say he got in a plane crash with Willie Brown, but it was a different Black guy?
Yes.
Willie Brown was like, what is he talking about?
Yes.
Yes, so Willie Brown is still bopping around the city. Carlton Goodlett Jr., who was a doctor and also ran like a lot of Black press in the city. Angela Davis and Huey Newton, who were part of the Black Power, Black Panthers movement that was happening over in Oakland at the time, and Reverend Cecil Williams of Glide Church, another really big name local guy. They were all friends of friends. I'm doing air quotes. They were allies. They were political allies of Jim Jones.
That's amazing because most of those people did really good work in San Francisco and meant a lot to the city.
They did. This is kind of the hard part about this story, right? Like Moscone and Milk are local heroes, but there is like a little bit of a dark side to it. And if you're from here, you probably know that the politics in this town are, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's small city bullshit. I've heard it described as a knife fight in a phone booth because it's crowded. Everyone here is liberal, but they're like different flavors of liberal, which is, as we know, leads to like the worst fighting. So,
I just looked it up, by the way. It wasn't even 2 months. It was about 2 weeks. So
Jesus Christ.
Jonestown was November 18th, 1978. The assassinations of George Moscone and Harvey Milk were November 27th, 1978. So like 9 days later.
Yeah.
Awful.
The 70s were rough. There was a lot of assassinations going on in the 60s and 70s. Moscone ran against a man named John Barbagalata. He is like a real estate scion. You've probably seen his, like the Barbagalata real estate group is still around. I knew who that was right away because I see that name on like billboards and shit. He accused People's Temple of bussing in non-resident voters to throw that election. And Jim Jones's son says that that was actually true, that they did literally bus in. This is like, I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know.
Right.
Jones's son says it's true. Who knows, right? Moscone only won by 4,000 votes. So it was a very close election. But they were definitely donating to the campaign and turning people out to the polls, canvassing, this legitimate organizing work they were doing. So as part of this quid pro quo, Moscone appoints Jim Jones to be the director of the housing authority in San Francisco. Like, did you know that Jim Jones was the director of the housing authority?
There's a place in the back of my mind where that sounds familiar, but I don't know if I...
in hell, that sounds familiar in like the upside down. Yeah. So Joseph Freitas, who was elected district attorney, hires, this is again part of this quid pro quo for getting Moscone and Freitas elected. He hires Jim Jones's right-hand man, a man named Tim Stone, as a deputy district attorney. So now Jim Jones's top-ranking lieutenant in the People's Temple, is now a full-time district attorney with the SFDA's office. That means that when police and DAs start to look into allegations of misconduct, Freitas will put Stone in charge of those cases and they'll get quashed. This is straight up corruption.
Didn't we in the abortion episode talk about how Jerry Brown's dad got rid of corruption in the police department?
Yeah, it was gone. There's no corruption anymore either, Beth. I don't know if you knew that. Half of our planning department is not in federal prison right now. It's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. So is that libelous? I don't know. A lot of them are in prison.
It's not libel if they've been convicted of crimes. So you're welcome.
So the other thing is, Jim Jones has to go to housing authority meetings now, right? He's the housing authority director, commissioner, whatever it is. He's the head honcho. So these are public meetings where people go to ask questions, make complaints, whatever. He shows up to these meetings in his fucking sunglasses with an entourage of bodyguards who are also in sunglasses. And the bodyguards are black and they look like, it kind of is like a Black Panther coterie there with him at the housing authority meetings. So he's sitting up at the housing authority with an entourage of armed bodyguards. Everyone's wearing sunglasses and he fills the audience with elder members of the People's Temple. And they disrupt the meetings. They cheer for him. They make a lot of noise when someone's complaining. That's the kind of shit they're doing. He also, because he does some old-fashioned corruption shit, he basically sends public housing to his members. Public housing is a scarcity in the city. And so he puts his people in there because we're going to talk about it in a minute. They are now starting to live communally, under Jim Jones's socialist paradise where Jim Jones gets all the money and you get to live in a rat-infested tenement in the Tenderloin while Jim Jones takes your income. Yeah. 1977 is when Harvey Milk is elected. People's Temple helps with that. Milk knew he was insane, but he also kind of said he needed the votes. There's a quote where Harvey Milk told an aide, "Make sure you're always nice to the People's Temple. They're weird and they're dangerous and you don't want to get on their bad side." Oh, shit.
Oh, what a quote. Yeah, I was just going to ask, at what point did people know that this was, were they calling it a cult at this point?
We are getting there. It is kind of slowly bubbling up. I mean, once you see people panhandling on the street for money, reporters are going to be at these housing authority meetings and be like, what the fuck, right? What's going on here?
But people definitely, by this point, knew he was completely shady.
Maybe. I don't know if they knew yet. It's still the 1970s. But he is getting more weird, more paranoid, and he also starts closing the temple to the public. Before, it was kind of like open services, any type of church where you just can walk in. He starts closing those now because now he's doing extra weird shit. He's droning on for hours and hours and hours about who knows what. He's conditioning people to sit there and listen to him fucking ramble on and on in these sermons.
I will tell you that that's a skill he probably picked up sitting in on public government meetings because it's basically the same thing.
So he is also having these elaborate struggle sessions where he calls people up on stage to be berated. And I mean, this is a cult technique. We all know this, right? He's beating his followers. He's hitting them, or some other temple leader is probably hitting them on stage in front of other people. He's making them box each other as punishment. This is cult leader shit, and it's happening in the 70s. It is becoming, I keep thinking about this cult meter. When you see the needle going, we're halfway up now, right? We're at 12 o'clock. He's also got these armed guards around him at all times. He's starting to wear those fucking sunglasses. It's the iconic cult leader look now. Cult leaders and dictators, which he will kind of become a dictator in South America. He's a full-blown meth addict by this point, and he wears the sunglasses because his eyes are always super bloodshot. The socialism continues to get more extreme. Now he's confiscating all of people's property. So their real property, people are turning over titles and deeds. They're turning over businesses. They're turning over their full salaries, everything they own. They are now no longer allowed to have private possessions. Everything is property of the temple, aka property of Jim Jones. He begins to assign them to communal living situations, which are not great, okay? Because he's using all of his money for the shit he wants, and Jonestown and Guyana and all this stuff. He's putting these people in public housing units and also in cheap apartments, literally in the Tenderloin. And some people are actually sleeping and living in the temple itself. He is telling people who they can date, who they can't date, who they can marry, who can have kids. He's also perving on his congregants. He is having sex with men and women in the congregation.
Yeah, I was wondering when the sex part would come in.
Oh, yeah. Every cult leader, right?
Yeah.
So he is having sex with like whoever he wants. The next note in my notes is like makes this even grosser because he starts calling himself father and his wife Marceline is called mother. So father is having sex with his congregants. He's getting a lot of them pregnant and making them get abortions. The only ones who can stay pregnant are the ones he wants to reproduce, by the way. Speaking of abortions, Beth. Shit is already getting really dangerous for these people, and they haven't even left San Francisco yet. So like already in the 70s, the mid 70s, it's getting shady and dangerous, and he's making it very hard for people to leave. This is another well-known cult tactic. He has all their money. He has spies everywhere, right? People are informing on each other. He makes people sign false confessions to fake crimes so that he can blackmail them. He is conditioning them with fear and paranoia. You know, so it is sometimes hard to take this man seriously because he does the goofiest shit. Okay, so like first it's like chicken guts. I pulled the cancer out of you. And he also stages fake assassination attempts on himself.
What?
One of these happened in the city. He had someone fire a gun, just fire it into the air. He had like a blood bag in his shirt that he fell to the ground and popped open. Several of his aides and family members rushed him inside and people thought he was dead. Like the congregants were wailing, all this shit carrying on. And then they come out and say he healed himself magically because he's Jim Jones and he's used his divine socialism to heal himself. Like that is some goofy shit, but it worked because these people were becoming conditioned. I don't want to say brainwashed because I don't like that term, right? You're nodding, right, Beth? I feel like these people have been conditioned psychologically. The other word I'm going to use a lot, which is not exactly correct, but it's like grooming to me. He's grooming them to accept violence and fear and paranoia. When the police heard about this alleged assassination attempt, they came to investigate and he denied the whole thing, right? Because no one actually shot him. He fired a gun in the air and did some Three Stooges bullshit where he fell on the floor and rolled around and came up covered in blood. He also starts, just like a trigger warning on everybody, the word suicide's about to come up a lot. So I know that's like a sensitive one. I'm just going to say this now before I even get into it. These people did not commit mass suicide. This was a mass murder. Most modern scholarship agrees with me on this, but I'm going to be using this language because this is the language that Jim Jones is using to his congregants. In 1968, he does his first, I'm going to call it a suicide drill. Okay. He passed out cups of champagne at a New Year's party, waited till everyone had drank it, and then told them there was poison in it and they were going to die. He does this multiple times. Okay, so it's hard, I think, for us to imagine how you could do something like this, like how you could get 900 people. And we'll get into how it went down. But like he started this stuff 10 years earlier. And he calls it revolutionary suicide. That is a term he got from Huey Newton. He's not using it correctly. And even Huey Newton, who he knew, told him, that's bullshit. That's not what I meant by that. But this is the term he uses, and he will keep this shit up for 10 years. He's grooming them. People in San Francisco are starting to get suspicious, okay? This stuff is going too far. But Jim Jones has connections everywhere. He knows the editor at the Chronicle. He gets news stories quashed everywhere. No one can get a negative news story out about Jim Jones because either he calls in a favor to get it quashed, or like the Temple members will disrupt the editorial staff until they call it. Also, Milk, Moscone, and Freitas ignore these calls to intervene and to investigate because they're in his pocket.
I actually had not anticipated how much Jim Jones and Harvey Milk and George Moscone were intermingled in this way that just makes the whole situation so weird and complicated.
Yeah. And again, the reason why we're even doing an episode on this is because this is a Bay Area story, specifically a San Francisco story. This is not just Jim Jones. I mean, look at all the people we've named so far. These are everyday household names in the city. In 1977, finally, a magazine called New West is able to publish a scathing investigation. They have like a new editor who's like younger and more excited, more maybe not connected, right? Like he doesn't have any leverage over her. And they publish a really scathing set of articles. And then after that, so they have quotes from defectors, but then more defectors come forward. It's kind of a snowball effect. And this is the first time that it's really come out in a direct, truthful way to the public. They may have heard about it or whatever, but this is the first time that it's like on paper, in your face. People are really like, oh, I knew it. So this is kind of the pivotal moment where he decides he needs to execute the plan to go to Guyana. Now he's got to get the fuck out of town because he is committing crimes. And so are some of his followers. Now there is some momentum to look into it. So he's like, we got to go to South America. And South America was not ready. This compound, let's call it, they had started work on it, but it was supposed to be like a 10-year plan. Like he had sent advanced people down there to start clearing land and doing that stuff, but it wasn't ready to go. It was not ready for over 900 people who go to this compound. And it's just not ready to support all those people, but he's got to get the fuck out of town because his number is up.
Well, and I imagine he needed all of his people to go with him because any separation would sort of break this connection of grooming and controlling people.
He cannot tolerate any dissent or separation. That's the ultimate betrayal to him because he's such a control freak. So we're not going to get into it in this podcast. You can read the books and find out how he would threaten defectors. They would send death threats. There's all kinds of bad stuff that legitimately did happen to those people here in the US if they left. And that was here in San Francisco. Right? So in order to get these people to Guyana, now the Temple members know that this stuff is in the press. And he's probably whipping them up into a fury. But what he does is he doesn't want anyone to not go. He doesn't want anyone to say, nah, I think I'm going to stay here. So Temple aides and Temple leaders show up at these communal apartments in the middle of the night and say, we got to go. Pack your shit. They're not allowed to call and tell their family members. They're supervised while they're packing all their things. And they are driven straight to the airport. He drives them to different airports. He doesn't want the press to know that 1,000 people just left San Francisco to go to South America.
Right.
So they're dispatching them to different Bay Area airports. Some of them are being bused to other states to fly down there.
Wow.
So that the press doesn't know.
Right. It's really creepy, though. Basically kidnapping people in the middle of the night.
It's so trafficking. Yeah, kidnapping. It's really very, I mean, this is where when you're grooming people to obey you at all costs, this is what happens, right? And you take all their money. You know, when they get to Guyana, they have no passports. He takes their passports. There's like a bunch of points where you're like, why don't people leave? The other thing about Jonestown that I think you have to understand is that there's this like really vicious momentum to this cult that starts like once they get to San Francisco, the momentum is building. You can really feel, I feel it right now when I'm just reading this outline to you guys, right? It's just it just has this really uncanny, scary momentum. You know it's going to end badly.
I will say too, there's this thought that only really like gullible people would join a cult, but it's proven time and time again that that's not the case. It's anybody promises you like belonging and togetherness and safety and protection and community. Mm-hmm. Like anybody can be drawn into that.
And most cults start off good, right? I mean, you don't join something unless there's something appealing to it. I mean, people were drawn to these ideas of social action and racial justice and, I mean, socialism. They were drawn to this stuff. Anyone who's listening who's like, this is socialism. This is not real socialism, idiots, okay? This is not the Swedish government. This is Jim Jones's alleged socialism.
Yeah, this is like a dictatorship.
This is cult shit, you guys. There was this really good book. It's called Cultish by, I think it's Amanda Montell. I think she has a podcast now too, but she talks about how language is really integral to cult dynamics. And he's adopting the language of progressive politics to bring people in and keep them in. He's not practicing those principles. He's using the language to lure people in. In Guyana, they had sent people out to get things ready. They knew they were going to need the cooperation of the local government. So he does it through bribery. He's bribing local officials in Guyana. He is pimping out female temple members to date and sleep with the officials in Guyana. He pays them cash.
Trafficking again.
Yeah, once again. He bribes them in cash and liquor. He's smuggling liquor in, and he's also smuggling weapons and ammunition into this compound in crates of farm supplies. I guess we should talk about where Guyana is. I had to look it up. I knew it was South America, but I didn't quite understand where it is. Guyana is at the northeastern section of South America. It's right next to Venezuela. We are probably drone striking Guyana right now as we speak. There's probably some guy trying to fish and seeing a reaper fly overhead. They were in the Jonestown. Jonestown is the name of the compound, of course, because it's run by a megalomaniac. It's named after him. It is in the rainforest in an area called Port Kaituma. It's inland, but not by much. It's mostly reachable. There's an airstrip, and I think it's navigable by boat. I think there's a river that comes through there. There's also the capital, Georgetown, is the capital of Guyana, Georgetown, where all the officials are, is nearby-ish to Port Kaituma. I was like, how far is it on Google Maps? And Google Maps was like, girl, no, we don't have that information for you. At the time, this is just jungle. Georgetown is a developed city, but Port Kaituma is a village with an airstrip, maybe a boat dock. So it's really very isolated, and it's dense jungle.
I imagine that he wanted people to not really see opportunities to leave.
1,000%. He was trying to make it as hard as possible for people to leave, especially because he knew that conditions weren't going to be great because this compound was not ready to go. The land was not super arable. It was not great for growing things that Americans are used to eating. None of these people are farmers. There's not a farmer in the group. They're reading like agricultural textbooks and trying to figure this out. And they're trying to become a self-sustaining commune, right? They're trying to feed themselves, and the conditions are not good. They did have electricity, and we know this because Jim Jones had a cabin that had air conditioning, obviously, and a refrigerator full of Diet Pepsi, because that's the kind of fucking psycho he was. Diet Pepsi.
All the luxuries, air conditioning and Diet Pepsi.
And he's getting drugs shipped in from the mainland, sedatives, barbiturates, methamphetamines, Valium. He's got a whole stock of it. The farming, like I said, it's not going great. And they're not really able to feed people very well. They're eating like rice and gravy. And they're working like 10, 11-hour days. The vibe is kind of labor camp.
Yeah, I was about to say, this sounds like our workhouses that we've talked about.
It sure does. It sounds like a labor camp. Once everyone arrived there, so 900 plus people, these people were well and truly fucked. They are in the middle of the jungle. He takes their passports. He has all their money. He is in full control of everybody at this point. The local officials are on his side because he's bribing them. They can't communicate. The only way to communicate is a ham radio. And there's only one radio, and Jim Jones has got it. He was running the camp, but he had like this little troika of like loyalist, high-ranking people who would carry out a lot of his orders and make a lot of decisions. These are like the true believers. A bunch of them are women, and they're almost just as scary as Jim Jones. They're drunk on the power too. They're at the top. They're getting all the perks, and they get to boss people around. He's got a sound system hooked up throughout this camp where he's constantly talking, right? Now, I do like to talk. I'm on 48 minutes here, and I'm not done with my outline yet. But he is constantly fucking talking. Can you even imagine? You're out there working in the fucking fields, digging up jungle mud to plant rice, and this guy is sitting in his air-conditioned condo, drinking a Diet Pepsi and taking Quaaludes. And he's just babbling over the sound system at all hours of the day and night.
This man needs a Twitter account. So he's not bothering his farmers.
Right. So that like Donald Trump, he could just be on Truth Social all day saying whatever the fuck he wants, and you can just mute him. They were only there for about a year, which is also like, once this train left the tracks, it moved very, very quickly. So they're only there about a year. And the whole time they're there, Jim Jones is talking about death constantly. And he's bringing up this idea of revolutionary suicide constantly. Constantly. They're always hearing about it. He would have these things that he called white nights, which were, I don't know how to describe this. I'll just tell you what it was. He would wake people up in a panic in the middle of the night, like, emergency, emergency, come to the pavilion. The pavilion is the like town square of the compound. He would, like in a panic, get everybody, oh my God, what's going on? Run to the thing. And then he would just hold them hostage there, rambling on and on and on, talking about revolutionary suicide. And then he would take a vote. He would say, who's with me? And at first, not even the top-ranking people would raise their hands. But over time, he wore these people down. They're very tired. They're not getting enough food. All they want to do is go back to bed. The shock is wearing off. Like, if he keeps talking about it every night, it becomes less and less shocking. If they didn't raise their hands, it could lead to like a crackdown, right? You could be punished for it. There could be group punishments for it. He's getting to where he's actually becoming kind of insane. He's on a shitload of drugs. He's taking meth all day. Then he's loading up on barbiturates and alcohol at night. This is a creepy detail about Jonestown. He recorded everything. He recorded a lot of stuff at People's Temple in San Francisco. But in Jonestown specifically, he had an audio tape recorder going all the time. There are thousands of hours of tape taken at Jonestown. And if you fucking hate yourself, you can listen to it at the Jonestown Institute archive. I will link it in the notes. It's very interesting to see the photos, but I do not recommend listening to these tapes.
Why was he recording everything? Was it for posterity?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that he selectively recorded, like he would turn it off and on. So it's possible like somebody starts arguing, he turns it off, turns it back on, right?
I mean, I guess it does seem like if you were paranoid about something too, that you might want to have tapes of everything.
And he's obsessed with himself. Like maybe he's just like, I'm so important that everyone needs to hear me all the time. There is a doctor. You can't see me. I'm doing the air quotes. Doctor on the compound. The doctor is a former meth addict who People's Temple got cleaned up and put through medical school, but he never completed a residency or extra training, so he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Jim Jones put this guy in charge of figuring out how to kill 900 people. That was this guy's job. So in addition to setting broken bones or passing out antibiotics or whatever this quack was doing, this has got like Final Solution vibes, right? Like it's the doctor, Jim Jones, and then his leadership, all women, by the way, who are sitting around trying to come up with these bizarre methods to enact a mass killing. They talked about poisoning, obviously, because that's what they're going to go with. They talked about stabbing them, and they talked about using germs, like germ warfare. This guy was growing botulism spores and tetanus and staph. And then we know eventually they settled on poison. He's like Dr. Mengele in there. Again, we're back to this like kind of creepy momentum with this stuff, right? It just keeps building and building. And everyone there knew something was coming, which is like the most awful part to me.
It is. What did Jim Jones say that like the point of everybody dying would be? Like what kind of point would it prove?
Well, there was like a bunch of, so like one thing he was saying was you have to like martyr yourself for the cause. That was one thing, the cause of racial justice. So like, let's go ahead and kill a bunch of Black people in the name of racial justice. He also really starts talking about how their enemies are closing in on them. And rather than give them the satisfaction of arresting them or killing them, they should kill themselves instead. Because that's kind of like what it gets to. That's what happens on the last night too. There were a lot of times throughout this story where this stuff could have been interrupted, where this momentum could have been interrupted. Like we talked about how the politics in San Francisco, the politicians did not intervene because of their relationship with Jim Jones. The papers didn't do anything because of Jim Jones's power. The Guyanese officials, some of them are being bribed and some of them are just afraid of America. They don't know. America's been fucking around in South America for 100 years now, and it's never once turned out good. These people do not want the CIA and the Marines zeroing in on their country. They don't really do anything. They're like, let the gringos kill each other in the woods. You know what I mean? Like they don't want the smoke, which reasonable given the past. The U.S. consulate in Guyana also does basically nothing. He knows it's bad and he's hearing complaints and he's getting calls from people at home and defectors and family members. But the government is like, well, they're a religious organization. They have a First Amendment. You know, they just kind of didn't care or they didn't take it seriously. The FBI starts monitoring the radio transmissions because they're on an open channel. The gross part about this story, which I'm going to tell you because it will make you laugh, is that the reason the FBI was really monitoring them closely is because they were using female ham operators. And there were not a lot of ladies operating ham radios in the 70s, and they thought it was hot. So
wow. Wow. Secret feminist agenda.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, we're almost there, you guys. A few of his top aides are able to escape. And, you know, because like the top guys can travel freely. A bunch of them defect and come home and say, you got to do something. He's out of control. Porters try to go down there and they're blocked and kicked out by customs officials there because they're being bribed to do that. Jim Jones is ratcheting up the pressure as we go, talking more and more about how the CIA is coming for them. The Guyanese army are coming for them. The defectors are coming for them and they're going to kill them. They're going to attack them. He's talking about death all the time. More white knights. You see the pressure is building. So the killing happens in November. In September of that year, he holds another suicide drill. He tells people he's poisoning them, but they mostly don't believe him. This time, though, the guards circle around them, armed guards, and force them to drink it. And this time it was just a drink. There was no poison in it. He's getting them ready.
I see how it works too, because if you keep telling people this is poisoned and then it's not, then the next time they're like, yeah, sure, it's poison.
Yeah, exactly. It's grooming. I don't know what else to call it. I'm sure there is a psychological term for this that I don't know, but the doctor, this psycho doctor, decides that the best way to go is cyanide. So he orders enough cyanide from the United States to kill 1,800 people. Around this time, they also start drugging troublemakers. They have a supply of like Thorazine and Valium. And if people start asking questions or threatening to escape, the doctor basically drugs them into a coma. So they have an infirmary where there's a bunch of people that are just like drugged. They can't escape. They can't tell anyone. They can't do anything because they're in a drug-induced stupor. The National Enquirer gets a hold of this story, which they actually did a good job on it. It was a national expose on what was going on.
It's amazing. For once, they didn't have to make anything up.
You'll recall, yeah, this was the Alien Baby magazine. Like, maybe people are too young that are listening to this to remember what it was like to stand in line at Safeway and read those National Enquirer headlines. It was like, Oprah's twin sister delivers alien child fathered by Donald Trump, right? And you're like, huh? Right?
But is that why no one took it seriously?
Well, no, this one they did take seriously.
Should we blame the National Enquirer? Okay.
Do your job. So they did take it seriously. And I think it was then a national story because National Enquirer is a national paper. And at this point, Leo J. Ryan, who is the congressman from San Mateo, who has family member constituents down there, is like, that's it. I'm going to go see what's going on. And he tells Jones, I'm coming. I'm coming on November 15th. Jim Jones knows it's about to be over. He knows that when Leo Ryan gets there, he knows it's going to be a problem. Even though he's telling people he's drilling them on how to act when Leo Ryan is there, they're preparing food. They're like buying food so that they can have food on site when he's there. They're trying to cover all this up. He knows. And I think the vibe I get is that everyone knows that this shit is, that it's about to really go wrong in some way. Like, the pressure that's building inside this organization is like almost becoming unbearable. It's like a powder keg, right? Like something is about to explode. Ryan arrives on November 15th, 1978. He has a news crew. He has People's Temple family members like who are worried about their relatives that are stuck in Guyana. He has Jackie Spear is his aide, and she was a local congresswoman for many years. I think she just retired recently. And then 2 Temple lawyers come from California as well. And their plan is to try to keep Jim Jones on the straight and narrow while this congressman is here and to try to convince the congressman that everything's okay. Spoiler alert, those 2 lawyers escape into the jungle, and they do escape and make it to safety, which is wild. I don't think they really knew what was going on necessarily there either. They were in California. I think one was from LA and one was from San Francisco. And I think they did not really understand either until they got there. While Leo Ryan is there, he stays overnight on the compound. He's meeting with people. He's talking to them. People start passing him notes saying, please get me the fuck out of here. Imagine how scary. It's really authoritarian shit, right? Where you can't even say out loud that you want to leave. You have to pass a note because you don't want to get like drugged with Thorazine and put in a fucking dug out box on the farm, which is another thing they did. Like, you're chained up. So they start passing notes and Jim Jones finds out. And then other people start coming forward saying, we want to go too. And because there is a camera crew there, Jim Jones cannot say no. He knows there's a camera crew and there's a congressman there. So he's like, okay, I guess you guys can go, but we'll miss you, blah, 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 right? That's obviously not true because once I think he leaves with like 15 or 20 people, 15 or 20 defectors. And Leo Ryan has chartered 2 planes that are at this Port Kaituma airstrip. When Leo Ryan leaves with the defectors, Jim Jones sends a truck full of armed guards behind him. And right when they get to the airstrip, the armed guards open fire. They kill 5 people, including the congressman. I think a dozen people are injured. One of the guys they sent was a defector with a concealed weapon who got on the plane and started shooting people, but they got the gun away from him. And that guy was actually charged with a crime back in California. So exactly one person was held accountable.
Yeah, Jackie Scheeres was one of those who was injured that survived. She took a bullet in the leg, if I recall.
Yeah.
Just awful.
It's really scary. That's the other thing about this story is it's so frightening. It's very scary. It's kind of like a horror movie. This, of course, is the event that precipitates the mass murder. And I'm sorry, I know this is a long episode, you guys. I really wanted everyone to understand everything that led up to this and like how this happened. I think there is value in understanding how, and also in seeing all these places where he could have been stopped and he wasn't.
Yeah, I appreciate all of this. It's much deeper than I've even ever looked into it.
This is kind of the event where now he has now killed a sitting U.S. congressman, which is actually, I think, the only time a sitting U.S. congressperson has been assassinated in office was Leo Ryan. By the way, shout out to, here comes my Bay Area bona fides again. Shout out to Leo J. Ryan Park in Foster City, California. Which I never knew who he was. It was just Leo J. Ryan Park. That's the big park in the middle where all the shit is. And I was obviously a small child when this happened. So I didn't know. I had no idea who Leo Ryan was until I learned about Jonestown. So they got a bunch of shit named for him there, which is good. Leo Ryan is the only hero in this story. That's it. The rest are either compromised or villains.
No, Jackie Scheeres. Jackie
Scheeres. Leo Ryan, Jackie Scheeres, and the crew that came down there, I guess I should say, right? Yeah. Sorry, I was including her in that. I like her. She's good.
But not the 2 lawyers that escaped into the jungle.
No, but you know what? They had to pay. They had to walk through the Guyanese jungle in like their tasseled loafers and their fucking, you know what I mean? Like, they paid. I want to say this other thing, which I was thinking about as I was doing this story. I kind of see him, Jim Jones, as like a family annihilator. Family annihilators, if you guys don't know, they are people who kill their families and then themselves. It's usually men, although not always. We recently had a case in San Francisco with the mother. Really awful. Usually what happens with these people is they kill everyone when it's about to be revealed who they really are or what their lives are really like they're out of money or someone committed a crime or someone's having an affair, and they cannot handle that. And so they take everyone with them. And that's kind of how I see Jim Jones, right? He knew that the mask was off. He was going to be exposed big time. He was probably going to go to prison. And then all of these people, the spell would be broken. Everyone would know all of this stuff that he worked for 15 years to keep private. That's why he decided to kill everyone. He wasn't insane. I know I joke about him being insane, but he was aware of what he was doing. And he had been preparing for it for a long time. It's back to 1968, at least, that we know that he was preparing to murder his entire congregation. I think also partly one of the reasons why I think it made it easier for him to call it suicide instead of I am murdering 900 people. I think that's another part of the motivation for using that term.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right? As soon as all this happened, he calls an emergency meeting. He tells people that the Guyanese army is coming. He says, we killed this congressman. We had to kill him. We had to defend ourselves. And now the army is on its way. And they are going to torture and murder all of us. Yeah. Then 25 armed guards show up and circle the pavilion. Everyone knew, I think, this time that it was real. They wheeled out a drum that had a big C stamped on the side for cyanide. In the drum was a mixture of potassium cyanide, Valium, chloral hydrate, potassium chloride, and Flavorade. Not Kool-Aid, okay? Also, once again, if you hate yourself, you can go listen to the tape. It is all recorded. There's several hours of tape. And if you want to know what it's like, the tapes, you can listen to the last podcast series because they're clipping little pieces of it and then giving context. You're not listening to the full tape. They're kind of buffering it with context about what's going on. It's more manageable that way. So nurses and soldiers passed out paper cups full of poison, and guards pointed rifles at people to force them to drink. The first people killed were the children, I am sorry to say. Syringes were used to inject the drug into their mouth if there were babies and little children. Parents were told to give it to their children, and if they didn't, someone else would do it. They would take the baby away from the parents and do it, either the nurse or the soldier. This is being done at gunpoint. There were 304 minors killed that day. 300 kids. People walked off with their children to suffocate to death in the fields around the pavilion. In the end, everyone was forced to drink the poison, or they were injected with it, or they were shot or stabbed or otherwise killed. A few people actually escaped. So there was one family who was preparing to leave. They had a plan. And when they saw this happening, they got in the jungle with their supplies. They escaped and they lived. The lawyers escaped and lived. And then there was actually one woman who was asleep through the whole thing. So imagine waking up and you go out there and there's the entire compound is dead. She was an older disabled lady and she was like, I'm not getting up for this shit again. And she went back to bed and they lost count of her. So God bless, but her sister died. Okay, it's all terrible. There's nothing good. Jim Jones waited until everyone was dead. He surveyed his damage and then he shot himself in the head. He took the easy way out. Everyone else had to drink cyanide and suffocate to death and die face down in a field. Jim Jones took the easy way out. I have one quote that I want to read you guys before I hand it over to Beth. This is a quote from Season of the Witch, and I think this is like the best way to close out this portion of the story and how it relates to San Francisco. Here's the quote. This is from David Talbot, Season of the Witch. When Jones staged his great escape, he did not simply destroy over 900 lives and plunge thousands more into bottomless grief. He poisoned a language of social justice. Everyone who had joined hands with his crusade, whether for opportunistic or idealistic reasons, was now contaminated by Jonestown. As the news images of bloated corpses sprawled in the dust were beamed back to San Francisco, the city shuddered. The same free air that had nurtured the beats, hippies, gays, and a growing garden of the imagination had given birth to a monster.
What a quote. And I'm glad that he made that clear that Jim Jones co-opted all of this stuff that was for the good and turned it in such a way that made it untrustworthy, maybe still to this day in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, you guys.
Let's never do that again.
Let's never. I'm so glad I got this shit out of my head. I'm going to burn this outline.
It is the new moon. So the Guyanese government did not want to keep all the bodies of the Jonestown dead. They didn't want to have to deal with any of this. So all of the bodies of the dead were taken to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware for identification and notifying next of kin. The FBI had the job of doing identification. They used fingerprints, and I have a note the other means, so I assume maybe dental records. We don't have DNA at this point, so
there were photos too.
Yeah.
And a lot of records, I think, from Jonestown.
Within about a month, so this would be mid-December 1978, within about a month, about 600 of the bodies had been identified. Families were able to start making funeral arrangements, but some of their relatives could not be located and others did not want to claim their dead for any of a number of reasons, I imagine.
Yeah, I think a lot of people alienated their family too.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of shame around this too.
For sure, yes.
Leo Ryan was buried in the Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno, California, so close to where he was a congressman. And that's one of our military cemeteries. So buried with honors. Jim Jones' ashes were scattered into the Atlantic Ocean about a mile off of Bethany Beach, Delaware.
That's interesting.
Yeah, another 300 people, mostly children who did not have good medical or dental records, could not be identified. And again, that's mostly the children.
I mean, a lot of those kids didn't have birth certificates or anything too, if they were born out there. Yeah.
Yeah. 6 months later, in May 1979, the San Francisco Council of Churches formed this group called the Guyana Emergency Relief Committee to arrange to bury all of the unclaimed dead from Jonestown. And this was about 410 people. There's a cemetery in Oakland called Evergreen Cemetery. The owner is a guy named Buck Camphausen, and he offered to create a burial site for these unclaimed dead from Jonestown. Evergreen Cemetery, I didn't actually look when it opened, but it is quite historic. Thousands of people who died from the 1918 flu pandemic are buried there. Many Hells Angels members. Huey P. Newton was cremated at Evergreen Cemetery. You know, this guy, Buck Camphausen, he's like, I have this space near the crematory in the cemetery, and I'll donate this land to bury all of these people. He bought concrete burial boxes, started again with the children, and it took about a month to bury everybody. That's a lot of people.
Yes. It's not, I mean, it's not technically a mass grave, is it, Beth? But it's much more intentional, I guess, than that.
Yeah. There's a site where we'll get into it, but there's these memorial markers now. But then around that burial place, people who were related to the Jonestown dead are also buried. So when they died later or something else, so they could be near their family members.
Yeah, I like that.
However, it took until 2011 to create some kind of memorial to these people.
Like a marker?
I didn't get into all of the history of it, but there was a lot of debate, a lot of fighting, a lot of disagreement about what it should look like and who should be included. And notably, there was a lot of fighting over whether Jim Jones's name should be included. So this is, again, a burial site with about 415 people. But the markers that are there have the names of everybody who died that day.
Oh, all 900 plus. Yeah.
Jim Jones's family wanted his name to be included. Obviously, some of the survivors' families did not.
And fuck off. First of all, who even are you? Go put your hand down, right?
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it was decided that his name should be on there because it's a matter of historical record.
That's fucking bullshit. Yeah, sorry, Beth.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm interrupting you with my commentary. Tell the story.
Obviously, he was horrible. But also I see the value in saying this is part of the history. So I went out there in October of 2025 because I'd never seen this place before. And so I looked at all of there's these 4 plaques on the ground surrounded by rocks. It's really tidy. There's usually flowers put out there for the dead. Now, again, Jim Jones's name is on here, but people have been working on scratching it out. So I like this little bit of like community
activism.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I understand that, like, I don't want his fucking name on there either, right?
Yeah.
Like, we all know who it was. I get it. But also, I think it's kind of ridiculous that they even took input from the family. Like, sorry, you guys.
Yeah. I mean, on the plus side, Leo Ryan's name is on there, along with the others who were killed on the airstrip. So, again, everybody.
Wait, can I ask you a question, Beth? Mm-hmm. Was Leo Ryan in the military, or did he get to be buried at the National Cemetery because he was a congressperson? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I was just curious.
The surviving families tend to have a memorial. They go out to the site in Oakland every year and, pay their respects and maybe go out to dinner afterwards. But it's getting to be a smaller and smaller group as people get older. Unfortunately, Buck Camphausen, the person who kindly donated this land on one of his cemeteries, is now in a lot of legal trouble.
He's not running a cult, is he?
No, it's not quite that bad.
Not practicing divine socialism? Yeah.
He owns 4 cemeteries. So Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, Mount Tamalpais Cemetery in San Rafael, Skyview Memorial Lawn in Vallejo, and the Chapel of the Light in Fresno. I think he lives in Vallejo, which is sort of like Northeast Bay for people who don't know. Running a funeral business, is not always financially viable. And I don't know what the deal is with his finances necessarily. But a couple of years ago, he started this religious organization that he called Evergreen Ministries, because this is a way for him to not have that expense on his books, so to speak. However, when he did that, he you need to have a permit to operate a cemetery unless you are a religious organization. So when he started Evergreen Ministries, he let the licenses or the permits lapse. There's a state agency, the Cemetery Funeral Bureau, that you have to license with. And so he let all of those lapse. And in spring of this year, after a lot of legal stuff, those 4 cemeteries were ordered to close. However, as far as I can tell, they're still operating. Like I said, I went to Evergreen just in October. It's not closed.
Maybe he can't bury anyone new?
It's possible. I tried to reach out to the Cemetery Bureau and find out what's going on and like how these cemeteries are operating and what the legal status is. I think Camphausen, because it was actually a court ruling that allowed the Cemetery Bureau to order closure, I think Camp has appealed to the appellate courts here in California, but I couldn't find the case in the case search. So it's really unclear what's happening.
Infamously
right now.
Not a great search tool, by the way.
In addition to being ordered to stop any cemetery business, including interments, and he's supposed to sell these properties, he's supposed to pay $5,000 fine for each of the cemeteries.
Could add up.
Like if he continues to run them, he has to pay that amount of money. It really is in limbo. And unfortunately, that means that this Jonestown memorial is also in limbo. I mean, I guess the ideal outcome would be for somebody else to buy the cemetery or to buy all of these cemeteries. Camphausen denied that his cemeteries were operating without the proper permits. And he said, you don't need a license to be a church. So all the churches that have cemeteries, they don't have to make reports to the Cemetery Bureau. I think he thinks he's being really smart and he figured this out, but it's not really going in his favor.
He read Dianetics and he was like, here I go.
California Assembly member Damon Connolly sent a letter to the Funeral Bureau specifically raising concerns about the Mount Tamalpais Cemetery, which is in his district. And he accused Camphausen of having a history of blatant misconduct and financial impropriety. And Camphausen said he doesn't agree with the allegations of mismanagement because staff has been maintaining the cemeteries. I went out actually to Mount Tamalpais Cemetery a year or two ago, and it is kind of overgrown, and some of the headstones are starting to fall over. I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but there's like a little bit of wildlife and nature and shrubbery is really pretty in a cemetery. And then there's a point where it starts to swallow up graves, and it's
then you're just not taking care of it, right?
Yeah.
There's cultivated wild areas, but that's not what's going on here.
Yeah.
They don't have a new hipster gardener over there. They're not taking care of their shit.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you about the legal aspects of it. Like, it's essentially a contract, right? Like, when you buy a grave site, what you pay for, it goes into the perpetual care fund, and they're supposed to keep it in an operable condition. So
well, and one of the things that has come is that the state was granted the ability to seize the eternal care fund of these cemeteries so that Camphausen will stop doing whatever he's doing with the money. I don't know the details, but
he's running a church, Beth.
Exactly.
Beth, this is divine socialism. Why are you questioning it?
I understand that Camphausen has other shady business stuff happening in Vallejo, and also I think he had a stroke a couple of years ago, so his health is declining, which just makes everything more complicated and worse. And like I said, I think it would be great if somebody else, I don't know who's going around buying cemeteries right now.
Well, maybe like a conglomerate or something. I don't know. I was also thinking that we'll probably do an episode on this in the future. There are a lot of people who get in over their heads with cemeteries, funeral homes, crematoriums. Like, there have been numerous fucking podcasts about this already, different parts of the country where, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it's like when older folks can't take care of it anymore. And it's not just a set it and forget it business, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a turnkey operation. Like, you got to be out there, and they just they get overwhelmed. They don't have the staff. You can't pay your gardeners. You can't, there are much worse cases of what happens when a funeral home business goes wrong.
Sure.
Like, just watch The Mortician on HBO. But this is not that, I guess.
No.
Right?
It is at least not that bad.
It's just some light tax fraud. Yeah.
Some light mismanagement of cemeteries and a little bit of things getting weedy. But, when I went out to Mount Tamalpais Cemetery, they actually have signs that say, like, telling visitors to, like, look after their messes and take care of the grounds. And I'm like, it's a little bit rich from somebody who's not taking care of the grounds.
Yeah, like, that's not our job. Hey, family members, you paid for perpetual care, so get out here and perpetuate it, right?
What will happen to these cemeteries and to Jonestown's memorial here? It's up in the air. I hope that it comes out okay, but it's really hard to say at this point.
Yeah. Another, like, weird local angle, right?
Yeah. This story is just bad all the way down.
There's nothing good. Leo J. Ryan Park has beautiful fireworks everywhere. In the 1980s, people used to windsurf in that fucking lagoon. I don't know if they still do that. You couldn't pay me
Probably.
that water. It used to be full of jellyfish when I was growing up.
Oh, wow. Nice. So thanks for everyone who has been listening to us through this long journey through Jonestown then and now. And we hope that you learned something new.
It has been, like, consuming me for a couple weeks now, and I'm ready to put it to rest. But it is like, I'm glad that we can talk about it and I don't know what I'm saying, Carolyn. Just cut me at I don't know. I'm tired. We're an hour and 36 in.
Are we okay? What should we say? Should we say anything else to wrap it up?
I don't know. It feels like this one could kind of just fade you out.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Fade to black.
Dead Reckoning, the podcast where death isn't the end of the story. Hosted by Courtney Minnick and Beth Weingartner. Produced by Carolyn Kissick and Here Lies a Story. With art design by Dante Silliman. Our music is Act Calm by OTE. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Dead Reckoning on your favorite podcast platform or email us at show@deadreckoningpodcast.com. You can follow Courtney at Here Lies a Story on Instagram and at Courtney Minnick on Blue Sky and see more of her work at herelisastory.com. You can follow Beth at Beth Weingartner on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Mastodon, and see more of her work at bethweingartner.com.